Hello everyone, and welcome to webinar number 5 for Tidy Up Challenge. This is going to be a bit of a special edition as we are pre-recording it to be able to address some of the many wonderful questions that you guys have been sending me. Some of them, I will address those at the end of the webinar. I tried, some were quite similar, so I tried to combine questions together to make it a little more concise and to make sure that I got as many of those concerns taken care of. Obviously, I might not have had the time to take care of everything, but whatever questions you feel like they were not addressed, or in some cases, if they were a little more detailed, I will probably get back to you personally with some ideas on how to take care of your question. All right. Other than that, we'll get started with our mementos, which is our very last category. We're on our final stretch of covering every single one of the categories. And I hope you guys have had a wonderful time so far. I know I had. I've been learning a lot by doing this program, and I hope you guys have had a good time, and it's been an enjoyable experience for you too. So with that, let's get started. All right, so today we'll be dealing with our final category, which is our sentimentals, our memento category. This is always a tough one to deal with. Everybody has, almost everyone has a hard time. And that's the main reason why it's the last one, right? Because it is tough. It is not meant to be easy. This is just a wonderful quote that I thought would be very, very meaningful, and it would make a lot of sense for us. No matter how wonderful things used to be, we can't live in the past. And even those objects that were part of our lives and they were very important to us, they don't necessarily express who we are now, right? Sometimes it was something that it was really meaningful to you at some point in time. It was a hobby that you loved. It was a memory of someone or a relationship or a different time in your life, and you can't, it's not necessarily part of who you are at this moment, and that's okay. It's part of your history, and it doesn't mean that it wasn't meaningful. But sometimes you've just outgrown that little piece of your life, and it might be time to move on to the next step. So I joke this, we save the best for last, the toughest category. It's funny because this will vary. For some people, it is definitely the hardest one to deal with. For other people, not necessarily. Maybe they are not really attached to that many kind of sentimental possessions. They are more the kind of people that just enjoy having their own, just keep the memories to themselves, and they save those in a different way. Whichever category, whichever camp you're in, that's okay. We'll be able to hopefully help you out in dealing with your sentimentals. This is one of those categories that absolutely I would recommend breaking it down. Unless you're feeling that, you're feeling strong that day, but take the time to really, really go through it. It's going to be a tough one. It's going to be one of those that it's impossible not to read those cards or those old journals or those letters. And this is part of the process, especially if, you might want to let it go. Especially if you want to let it go, you might need that extra time to say goodbye, to revisit, so it gets very emotional for some. Other people, sometimes it's just, you try to remind yourself why you kept it in the first place. Again, whichever way works best for you, just break it down in manageable pieces, and you should be okay. I'm sure you'll be fine. The most important thing, and I keep repeating that because it is so important, just be kind to yourself. It's very hard to revisit every possession that you own, and you guys have done this amazing job. You set yourself up to this great task of actually revisiting everything you own and checking if it does have a place in your life, it really belongs there, if you really need it at this time, and if it's still meaningful to you. So pat yourself on the back, because you've made it so far, right? Even if you're still a few categories behind, it doesn't matter. You're working through it. So don't create insane expectations to yourself. The important thing is to keep moving forward. So let's get a little bit more into the nitty-gritty of what to do when it comes to the sentimental category. If you get to it, like get those objects out. Let's say you're working through, some old photos or some travel mementos, whatever it is that you decided to pick on that day. Just take it aside. Pick a nice quiet moment to yourself, and take the time to think about it, to touch it, to read it if it's something to read it, to look at it, and get that feeling of how you feel. And with some of those, I mean, it's sentimental, so that it's on the name itself that they will bring something to you regardless, right? Most likely you will have a feeling that will come along with it. And this is to kind of help out these ideas is on how to keep it rational, how to be able to, keep your mind focused when you're trying to do this. So I always tell my clients to take a moment to think why it is that it's becoming hard to do it. Do you really need to keep that object there? It's hidden away in a box somewhere in your attic sometimes. Why is it's so hard? Is it because it was a gift? Is it because you spent a lot of money on it? And a lot of the times is something that it's attached to a memory of a good time. So I did this with a few of my clothes, actually. Clothes that I really, I was younger, and and I was actually I put on a few pounds since then. And at the time, I was a little, I really don't want to get rid of those. I really love them. And I realized that I was attaching memories to the clothes because I was very happy. I had trips and special events that I attended wearing those clothes. But even now, a few years later, even probably if I lost enough weight to fit into them again, I probably wouldn't wear them because they might not really be my style anymore. So what I did was, because, for whatever reason, that fabric, that outfit, I just took photos of them. Like, take a photo of that object. And then when you want the moment, a photo definitely occupies way less space. Take a photo, so whenever you feel like, oh, that dress, you can go and take a look at it. Or that little travel knickknack that you bought in a street market in Morocco. Just, go take a look at it. Or most likely you never will. This is kind of the point that I'm trying to drive here. Very likely that object that you were attaching so much meaning to isn't the reason why you remember that moment. It was because the moment itself was special, right? So this is what it goes to the next little tip there. Do you want the moment, the object, or do you want the memory? So this happens a lot, especially with travel knickknacks or souvenirs, that kind of thing. But I have to keep this. I bought it in, when we took this trip in our honeymoon, and most of the time it isn't. Would you forget your honeymoon or the wonderful time you had there if you don't have that keychain or that weird little statue that you bought somewhere? Not necessarily, right? a few years ago, I used to work, when I was younger, I used to work as a nanny. And I remember this one time I was helping my boss with, she was setting up to do an yard sale. And I was, helping her out, sorting through her things. And I still remember that she found this box. And basically, she couldn't get rid of anything. Every object that she would touch, she would go, oh, but there is this. Oh, but I remember that, I can't. This, and they would go straight back into the box. And eventually she came into this vest, and it had been, mind you, stuffed in that box for years and years and years. It's, oh, but I can't get rid of this. I wore it for almost every day that winter when I was pregnant with my son. And her son was 11 by then. So just think about it. And I'm like, well, would you forget how wonderful your pregnancy was? Or, if you don't, do you have pictures wearing that vest? Like, why do you need to keep the physical object? It's just in a box, in your garage, and you didn't remember you had it until just now. That's take away the memory that you had. So sometimes you do have to kind of rationalize why is it that you were getting stuck, right? And the final little tip is, if you do decide to, to kind of help you get rid of this, is could you give that object a new life with someone else? Could you, maybe that vest, that maternity vest that means so much to you and had held wonderful memories to you, could help someone else, some new mom who is trying to, to set up a nice capsule wardrobe for her pregnancy without spending way too much. So why can't you, this is a nice way to think about it, that wonderful object that had so much meaning to you can all of a sudden be super meaningful for someone else and have a brand new life, which is way nicer and way more fair to that one, that meaningful possession that you had, than to be stuck at the back of your drawer or in a box, or, and this goes along to, who knows, musical instruments, an old suitcase, anything, right? A lot of different objects could fall into that category. It could be given a brand new life with someone else. Whatever you do decide to keep, though, and this is always my motto, keep it with confidence. I remember when I was in New York and we were doing our training for the consultant training, and we were going through Sentimentos. Someone asked our trainer, how did she feel about the Sentimentos? What did she throw away? And she said, well, my baby's pictures, I kept every single one of them. Don't have any problem with that. I kept all of them because I wanted all those memories anyway. So, and she just said it with like a smile. And you have to think about this. There are certain things that I'm not giving you a pass to keep absolutely everything. But whatever it is that you decide to keep because it just, touching it just brings a smile to your face, absolutely keep it. And don't apologize for it. Just keep it happily, and then find a way to make it have more meaning by having a purpose in your life, right? So this is something, the upcycle bit the little tip that I put there, it's one of those things that it comes to me a lot. Someone received, a lot of the times is, they got a piece of furniture or a painting or something special that they got from someone else. How can I make it part? I love it. I love the idea of it, and it has meaning to me. It's not necessarily my style, or I don't have a purpose for it in its current form. But let's say, it's a pretty silver tray, but I don't really use it, and I don't want to keep it hidden away in my cupboards. How do I display that? And you can find a way to display your jewelry or keep it constantly outside with something on it, for example. I've seen someone use these plates as decoration on their walls, and it was a beautiful idea. They got these, their mom used to collect these beautiful china patterns, and they would her mom used to just go abroad, and like whenever they would go on a trip, she would buy a plate, a really pretty plate, and And my client inherited all of that. She loved it. They were all beautiful patterns, but she's like, well, it's not like I'm gonna eat on them. My mom kept them all hidden away, but what do I do with them? And then she created an entire wall with those beautiful plates. And it made her smile every time she passed by it. She could tell the story to other people. So she found a way to not only give them a new purpose and a new way of displaying them, but yeah, like it was out there all the time, and it made her happy all the time. So, and this can be done in so many different ways. Sometimes a piece of furniture that isn't necessarily your style the way it is. It's kind of, kind of old-fashioned, but who knows? Maybe with a little coat of paint or, Pinterest again, find a different way to repurpose that item or use it in a different way. Oh, we have old postcards. Do a nice collage or laminate them and use them as bookmarks, or the same thing with some of the photos. Like, try to find a way to get those objects out of your basement or your attic and just get them outside and like make them, if they're so meaningful to you, keep them out all the time. So you remember those memories, they're not hidden away. And what happens, this is a common one too, what happens when you're dealing with someone else's memories? This one is particular, I guess it applies in different situations, but I'm going to focus right now because I'm touching on family heirlooms a little bit later. But what do you do when you're dealing with your children and your children's, or what you believe will be their memories? On my last newsletter, I gave you guys a few ideas on what to do with kids' artwork, right? So unfortunately, you can't keep them all. It's impossible. That at the rate that they produce them, it's really, really difficult to keep all of them. But obviously, you do want to keep some of it because it's wonderful to go back many years later and look at those. Oh, look at how fun it was when little Johnny started trying to draw, or oh, look at that, he already loved dogs way back before he was a vet. It's very cute and it's a great way to do it, but unfortunately you can't keep them all. So one of the things that I recommend, and kids generally don't want you to throw anything away in the beginning. As soon as it's nice and fresh, it has to go in the fridge and all that. But once it's down from the fridge, what you get, what you do with it, where does it go? So if you don't want to make that decision right away, you can always try to be sneaky about it. And if they're younger, I guess they won't mind too much. But a nice way is to involve the kids in the decision, is to get them involved into deciding what stays, what goes, what becomes a nice birthday card for grandma, or what gets to be maybe framed and displayed in daddy's office. There are like nice different ways to use those special, you have the special creativity of your kid and show it off to everybody, right? With the little ones, I always recommend get yourself a big bin. And this is, it goes with time. Everyone in the house should have their own little box, but with children, especially at the rate that they do artwork, just every time something comes into the house, and if they refuse to throw it out right there, just put it in the bin. Just start stacking them in a little bin. And at the end of the year, at the end of the school year, have them go through it and say, let's pick whatever, 5 per year that you want to keep. So, their favorite pieces of artwork, and because it won't be so fresh in their memories, it will be much easier for them to decide what stays and what goes. So just have them decide what are your top 5. And the other ones, that's the thing, can be repurposed, can be turned into, cards for family members. They can be given as little special gifts to other people, or can be tossed because, let's face it, not all of them will make the cut. For the ones that stay, make sure you date, if you were able to date the, which year it was and who did it, put it back in their box. And as you do it, as they move along through through life, you know, you end up creating this like little memory capsule of their whole lives, right? So little things that are important to them, and with time, it won't necessarily be artwork. It would be, you know, their ballet shoes, or obviously you don't want to keep absolutely everything, but you know, pick a few items every year that are meaningful, that will probably have played a special role in their life, and just, you know, keep a little box for them, and keep, you know, don't start adding more boxes. That's why I recommend like have one, and at the end of it, they will have this wonderful kind of capsule, memory capsule, right, ready to go with them when they go away into their own life. But they will have played a role in creating it. I kind of skipped the middle there because I will go back to it now. Because a lot of the times for parents, everything obviously is your little one that's growing up, right? So a lot of those items have, so everything that your child does has meaning to you, will be important to you. You remember that first ballet class, but who knows, they might not really care for ballet in a year or two. But for you, that was so special. So sometimes it's really hard for parents to be a little bit rational and sort of decide what deserves or what's important enough to be kept, which is why sometimes involving the kids once they get a little bit older, of course, in making a decision. What do you want to keep? What's important? Once they get old enough, they will be able to decide, because a lot of the times it is much more meaningful to you because you have that memory. So they won't necessarily remember every single little outfit they had as a baby, but maybe keep a couple that were really special to you. Keep the little a toque that they came from or the blanket that they came from the hospital with. Absolutely. Frame it with their little bracelet. Find a way and display it in their nursery. Or soon enough, like put it in their capsule. That would be meaningful, right? But just try to find a way to. It's very hard, but from the big moment, try to get that one little item that you know, and then you can explain it to them what it means. But don't try. Sometimes, like, don't get disappointed when sometimes they'll react to, oh yeah, okay, my first little pair of shoes. All right, mom, thanks. So don't take it personally, but you're their treasure keeper when they're, when they're very little. But once they get a little bit older, they can get involved in creating their own memories or deciding what stays. The memory itself of that moment, that event, it will be with them forever, right? So what they want to keep in terms of a memento of it, that's what you guys get to decide with time. In terms of storage of your sentimentals, I touched in this before, and this is how I have it in my house. We each have a box. So you get your own box, get a pretty one that will make you want to open it and go over it again and again. So each family member gets one box. Make sure, it has to be somewhat big enough that you are able to keep quite a few items and photos and cards, that kind of thing in there. But don't keep adding on to it and like, oh no, you're just in the next year's box. Just make the memories fit the storage. So every now and then you're gonna have to revisit to see if that is still that meaningful and it still needs to stay there, right? So keep your memories to fit the storage. Like we talked about before, it doesn't, soon enough you realize that, and we all, I guess, know that in the end, that you don't need to necessarily keep that movie ticket to remember that first date that you had, or I used to keep every plane ticket that I had, and like every trip that I would take, I would keep all those plane tickets. And that's the thing, for me, it was just really hard. I used to keep everything, like, subway tickets. Whenever I went to a new place, I would keep all those little things, and it was all inside a box. And eventually, one of the times that I went to Brazil, I went to my mom's house, and I was looking over this stuff. I'm like, well, why did I keep this? Because there was just these boxes and boxes of things, and it's not like I've forgotten those wonderful trips because I don't have the plane ticket. So nowadays, I mean, if you really feel like it was that meaningful and you need that picture of it, take a picture of the ticket, put it in the cloud. It will save you space, and if you want to go revisit it, it's there, right? So this is a way to do it. When it comes to the special items, I know that we had a really fun conversation about this in the group. What do you do for those special items, that guitar, those drums, those ballet shoes, right, that were so meaningful to you and they're so special, but you don't know, well, does it feel silly to keep my, my hockey helmet somewhere in the house? I'd say, you know what, display it proudly. Put it somewhere you can see and you remember how great you were playing hockey, or are, who knows? That might inspire you to go back. So it's the same thing, like keep them all, like put it in the wall. It can turn into a wonderful, a great conversation piece too. So people come in and, oh yeah, oh, you play the drums? And then you can tell all your, high school adventures when you're planning to join Nirvana or something, right? So I think it's just find a way to do it. If you have a particular item that you're trying to figure out how to utilize, just send me a message. I can try to find a way for you. Other than that, once again, Pinterest is your best friend. You will find someone who will have tried to find a way to show all their lunch boxes or their special ballet shoes or their collection of, vintage video games. There will be someone who have had that problem, and people can get pretty creative. So just display them out. Don't hide your special moments, right? When it comes to the photos, I know that I love photos and I love photo albums. I used to scrapbook and all of that. But these days with digital photos, we just have an endless supply of photos. We just keep taking them, and it doesn't occur to us that most of the time you'll never get them printed, and you don't really look at them again. So I actually am making a point. In the last few years, I've been trying to do this. When I come back I try to take, generally take a big trip every year. And after that trip, I try to pick 20 or 30 photos, and I actually have them printed. And I put them around my house. So some of them will stay in the cloud. Some of them is like, why did I take 35 pictures of the same sunset? Don't know, but we all do that. Why did I take pictures of everything I ate? Again, it's just the way it is with digital photos. It's an endless supply, right? So, but pick some photos that you actually want to keep of every trip. Pick, one photo of each day or two, or just pick a certain number. Get yourself a nice album and just have it in your house instead of a coffee table book. Just have a photo album of your most recent trip, and people can, look through it, or you want to look through it sometimes. It's quite nice. So, make printed photos a thing again. I think it's time to have them a comeback. The little gallery I have in my house, I created a little spot in my bedroom where I always have a few photos displayed there, and I change them up every now and then. Whenever I get new photos or I find some childhood photo lying around, I will just add it all there. So every now and then it changes a little bit, and this is a nice way to keep them moving and keep recycling those photos and keep the memories fresh too. All right, so I hope this was a good introduction to the memento category. We talked about it quite a lot in the newsletter last week. This will always be a kind of a tough category, and a lot of it is good sense. We have to just think about it. So I just say, take your time through it, break it apart, because you will find so many different things, between old journals or postcards or, photos, or there will be ticket, movie stubs. it will be tough. So break it down, make it reasonable, and then kind of power through, you know, get sentimental about it. Take the time to relive those memories, and then you get to decide what stays, what goes. The memories will stay for sure. If you need to keep a physical reminder of that event, absolutely. If you are absolutely sure that, you know, you just have to have it, just keep it with confidence and keep it in your life and just display it, right? Find a way to, so you're able to get that jolt of happiness every time you see it. So now I'm going to get into the second part of our webinar today, which is the questions that you guys have been sending me. So there were a lot of great questions. I couldn't fit them all, but I tried to combine them as well as possible to make sure that I could cover as much as possible. So one of the ones that I got here was, how long do I keep papers for? So when it comes to, I thought that for the questions I could just come in and say hello and you guys can see me for a bit. So when it comes to the papers, it's, you know, good sense. If it's anything that can be used for your taxes, receipts, you know, payment stubs, that kind of thing. If it's something that you have to keep it for tax purposes, I think the minimum you have to keep is 7 years. After that, I mean, hopefully they can come out after you, you know, after that time. But do keep it for as long as they can still revisit. Basically, the government can still revisit you for your taxes. So that might change from country to country. Here in Canada, it's an average of 7 years. So after that, you were probably fine. When it comes to warranties, keep them for as long as they're valid. Once they are expired, there is no point. Just toss them. Well, shred them, dispose of them responsibly, but just get rid of them. That there is no more purpose for it. Same thing with insurance. Like anything that has an expiration date, once it's over, you know, especially with warranties, it's like, well, there is no point. Like, this is kind of gone. You don't need it anymore. Just let it go. Trying to think of what else in terms of papers. I think those are the main ones that people actually do keep. And there are certain documents that you can never toss, right? I have kept every single one of my passports, obviously birth certificates, marriage certificates. I've been told that even, I checked this with someone, I had a client who was divorced, and she wanted to co-marry her old marriage certificate, and which I thought was quite amusing. So I looked it up, and it turns out you can't, because at one point she owned property with her ex-husband. There was something to do with her pension, so basically she was not allowed to do that. So when you are unsure in terms of legality, maybe double check, just in case. You don't want to get in trouble for that kind of thing. So the next question would be, what should I do with sentimental items that are not my own? So this is a situation that we're all going to deal with eventually. And a lot of the times it happens when you have to go help sometimes your parents, moving out, or your grandparents moving out into a home, or someone passes away, and you have to deal with that entire, with someone's lifetime collection of belongings and their own sentimental items. How do you deal with that? How do you go about deciding what matters, right? So one of the things that I generally recommend is start by, just calm down, take a breather, and think about the fact that those items were very important to that person, but they might not necessarily have a purpose for you. They fulfilled their purpose when they were, part of someone else's life. But still, they might be a wonderful way to connect with the rest of your family. So I have a case recently. So my partner's grandmother passed away last year. And I think they found a wonderful way to get the whole family involved in the process of, going through her belongings and her possessions in a really meaningful way. They got all the grandchildren together and her kids, so they all got together, and they each decided, okay, everybody gets a turn at picking one thing that they want at a time. Like everybody, they had a specific order, the oldest, but based on the children and the oldest grandchildren, like they would go in order of age, and everybody would get one turn to pick one object, and the next one would go, and it would go around and around. And it was quite interesting because none of the grandchildren, for example, or no one tried to pick the same object. And everybody had a connection with specific items for different reasons. So it was a wonderful way to honor her memory and to make her part of their lives still. But everybody got a chance to pick what was meaningful to them. So it could be a piece from her kitchen, like an appliance that one granddaughter remembers cooking with, and they had this wonderful memory that was related to that. Someone else had this beautiful Christmas ornament that for them, they attached a whole set of memories of grandma with them during Christmas time. So I thought it was a beautiful way to just honor her memory and make sure that everybody could keep a little piece that was meaningful to them. So I just thought I would share this because I thought it would fit really well in a situation like this. So the next one that I got was, how do I avoid collecting things I don't want? So this is something that happens a lot once you go through this whole journey. Most people become quite adverse to shopping, or they become, I don't want to say we start hating shopping. Most people become much more, they shop with purpose once they go through this. They become much more particular about what to own and what to keep to bring into their homes, right, and to bring into their lives. So how do I avoid collecting things I don't want, in terms of like, what if people on my birthday or Christmas, they might still try to give me things? How do I prevent this from happening? So for that one, I always say people will still try to give you gifts. It's only normal. It's a nice way that people are obviously trying to show their love for you, right? So if it's something that you absolutely don't want or that you really hate and you can't exchange, you can always try to find a way to give it a new life with someone else who might need that object or who might enjoy it. Don't feel guilty. The purpose of that gift was to show someone's love and care for you. So, don't feel guilty about it. Just give them a heart, wonderful, thank you so much, this was wonderful, how thoughtful of you. But if you really don't want to keep it, there is no point in having something just making you feel guilty, because it just makes you feel bad every time you look at it. So just don't. And another way is if someone then asks, oh, what would you like for Christmas? Or, what do you want to do? What do you want as a gift for your birthday? Trade in those experiences as opposed to gifts. You know what I would love? Let's go to the movies together, or let's go for brunch, or let's get our nails done. Find something nice that you can share instead, and say, how about we do this together, and I get some of your time, which, it's a way more meaningful gift. I would rather have that. I'd rather have some time with you. And most people will be very happy and flattered and happy to oblige. This one I had from a few different people getting in touch with me, very worried that they are not moving with their Kumari journey. They're not going as fast as they wish they could. What is the right amount of time to finish my entire home? So for this one, the right amount of time is however long it takes you. The only thing that I try to recommend people is just not, ideally it can take anywhere between a week and a year or two. It will depend on how much you have, how much time you have available. The one thing that I recommend is just try not to lose too much momentum, because obviously people get so excited in the beginning and they move much faster, or who knows, maybe they were on vacation when they got started and they're back to work now, or they have a small child, whatever happens. Sometimes things just happen, and you know, it gets affected. What you're planning to do gets affected by it. So it's okay. It's okay. What I generally recommend is just keep your momentum. If you can't dedicate, obviously, every weekend until you're done, not everybody can, dedicate 2 hours a week, however long you can, right? However long you, and then make that commitment and keep the momentum going. Okay, this week I will be going through my cutlery, and next week I'm going to be revisiting all my dishes. And just keep taking off one little item at a time. Don't compare yourself to others. We all have those categories that are much easier and some categories that are really, really hard. And, you know, we're all going through our own little journey here. And the important thing is go through it mindfully. You're doing this for yourself, not for others. It's not a race. All the information that we're going through here, I call it like the idea of, you know, 12 weeks. It sounds really nice, and some people can do it quite fast if they're able to, but the idea here was to cover every category and to basically have the time to discuss and break it down for you guys in that time. It doesn't mean that you have to be done in that time. If you need a little more time, give yourself however much you need. And just keep moving forward, one step at a time. So the next one is what to do about items that definitely don't bring me joy, but I need to keep. Oops. In this one, it's kind of funny. We all have those. We have things like, you know, my iron. Nah, not really, or my hammer. It's not necessarily an item that brings me a lot of joy. I don't know what's so much joy about a hammer or an iron, or sometimes some kitchen appliance. There are things that just, doesn't necessarily steer joy, right? Why is that? Well, but I kind of need to keep it. Can't get rid of it, but how do I get that spark? Do I trade it for a prettier hammer or a nicer looking iron? I still hate ironing. Yeah, I don't know. What do I do with it? So, or sometimes it's an item that is really expensive and you can't replace it right now, or it still works the way it should. So for those items, what I generally recommend is just you kind of give yourself a pep talk. Give yourself a reason to really have joy for those items. For example, that iron that you don't feel great about. Think about the fact that it allows you to, to look after your clothes, your joy-sparking clothes. It allows you to look after them and make them look nice. It gives you, when you have an important presentation at work, or when your child needs to look good for, their school play or whatever it is, it allows you to take care of your family too. So it's a way for you to show someone love, or love for yourself. So sometimes you have to kind of, go around it a little bit and infuse it with the joy. But sometimes you can find joy in an object's purpose. So that's a way to look at it. Let's see for the next one. All right. What we do with items that are damaged, like clothes with holes, old towels, and sheets, for example. So this one I heard from a few people. It does happen that you have clothes that you don't necessarily love, and I mean sometimes you do, but they're damaged. They have holes. I feel bad about throwing things in the garbage, but if I take it for donation, they will not take them, because obviously someone would buy that, right? So what do you do with those? But it just, there is that guilty feeling about, oh, this is just going to go into a landfill and it's terrible. There are a couple of, I mean, some people, there are a few ways of doing this or of thinking about it. Some people would just toss it in a donation bag anyway, and just let someone else deal with it, which I guess is a way to look at it. There are a few donation bins and donation areas in some organizations that will accept those items. And what they do with this, they do get recycled. They get those items recycled. I honestly, a lot of the times what I do is I just cut them up because you can use them for rags. So I end up sometimes, if it's something that I was like, oh, there's a little hole in it, obviously no one else can use it, but I can repurpose it. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll just cut up in like smaller pieces and I use them for rags. For things like towels and sheets, animal shelters will actually take them. Even things like Tupperwares that you don't have the lid for. There are a lot of these little things that animal shelters are quite happy to have for, you know, for the animals, and like old blankets and things like that. So those all can be repurposed that way. But I know it's hard to, because we all know what happens to all those textiles and that end up on a landfill. It's just nothing happens to them. It's just a waste. So I know how we feel bad about it, but you know, you wouldn't buy it, or you don't want to wear it anymore. So why would anyone else then buy it and wear it, right? So just if you sew or you quilt, that's the other thing, to look up any quilting associations in your area, and a lot of them will be happy to get like t-shirts and things like that, and they do reuse them for quilting. So if you are, or maybe you want to take up quilting, that's another thing that you can do with your time now. That's another hobby that you can pick up, right? So this is just an idea. So our next question, should I try to sell expensive belongings like clothes or books? This also came from a few different people. What do I do with those items that are really nice? I don't want to necessarily get the nice bag or, you know, those really nice reference books that I have. I don't want to donate them. I'm afraid, you know, they will not get used. But do I bother doing a garage sale or selling them? How should I try doing that? My answer to that is maybe. I think you should try to sell them if they really mean a lot to you and you feel bad about all that money. Absolutely try to sell them, but what I would say is get yourself a deadline. Okay, it has to be out the door by a certain date. List them. Take some time off your, off your day. Set up a day on your calendar. List them all, or really set a date for that yard sale, that garage sale that you're trying to do. Because my fear with a lot of those items is people say, "Oh, I'm going to try to sell this," and 3 years later, it's still sitting in your garage or on your storage locker. So give yourself a deadline. If those items have been listed to Craigslist or one of those selling apps or Amazon, wherever it is that you're trying, or your garage sale, they did not sell, out the door. Then by all means, you did your best, donate them. But don't, sometimes telling ourselves that we're planning to sell an item is a way to trick ourselves into not actually giving up that, that item. So just, I would try to sell it with a grain of salt. If you are really determined to do it, set up a date, a deadline. If it's not sold by then, donation it is. So that's our compromise. The next one I also got from a few different people. What to do about clothes that I love but don't fit me anymore? What if I finally manage to lose the weight? It's kind of what I mentioned before. This happens to almost all of us, right? We have those clothes that, again, they become a bit of a sentimental item because clothes are with us when different things happen to us. They attend events with us. So a lot of the times it's much more about the memory of what happened when you were wearing that dress or that suit or that t-shirt, right? It's so much, oh, it's a t-shirt that I bought when I went to Thailand for the first time. So sometimes it's so much more about the memory. In this, I see with almost everyone, oh, these don't really fit me anymore, but you know, I'm trying to lose some weight. And then I'll ask them, like, if you don't mind me asking, when was the last time you wore that? Oh, like 5 years ago, 4 years ago. Most of the time, it's been quite a while. And this happened to me. There were a few dresses that I really loved, and they were from, like, I bought them at a very, you know, special time in my life. And 5 years later, there was no way they would ever fit me. And I had to kind of talk myself into it. And that way, I love those dresses. They were really meaningful to me at that time. I would definitely have to lose quite a bit of weight to fit into them right now. But if I happen to do really good, stick to my New Year's resolution of going to the gym and eating right and get that weight down, am I going to wear that dress still? Is it still going to be my style? Or maybe I'll reward myself with a brand new closet that fits, you know, to 2017 me way better than, you know, 2008 me. So sometimes you just have to be a bit honest with yourself. If it is something that absolutely you just love the fabric, or there is some way that you can't part with, hold on to them a little bit. But kind of like the trying to sell items. If it's something that you look at it and it makes you feel happy because it just makes you feel happy, sure, hold on to it for a little bit. Give yourself a deadline. You might want to revisit it again. If it's something that every time you look at it in your closet, you feel bad about yourself, and it makes you feel, oh man, remember the time when I could fit into this? Oh, that was so great. Oh, I just feel terrible. We don't want that. That's not the purpose of it. Get yourself new clothes that fit you for who you are now and make you, how you are right now, feel amazing. It's, you know, it's way better. And then if you do end up, if, you know, like eventually when you lose the weight, get yourself a new closet. It happens. That's life. Like, we go up and down, right? But if you are keeping something that doesn't fit you anymore, and on top of that, so it's just taking space in your closet, and on top of that, it's making you feel horrible about yourself, do not keep it. That's not the purpose of it, right? That's the opposite of sparking joy. So don't do it. And finally, the last one of the questions, what should I do with random stuff that I come across while working on a category? That one it happens to everybody. It's probably happening to a lot of you guys as you work through, especially when you work through the kimono categories. You know, once you tackle those junk drawers, you will find a lot of random things throughout as you're moving along. With most people, I really recommend don't take any detours. It's just it just gets you distracted. So most of the time, if you find a random pen, or you know, a postcard or something, an old journal, it's especially important if you are going through other categories and finding sentimental items. Really don't touch them. Get yourself a little pile, or just, you know, go there to where the sentimentals are, toss it in there, you deal with it later. Unless, my only exception for this is, if you see that item and as soon as you find it, you're like, oh, geez, this postcard that I got from my, you know, old roommate from 20 years ago, yeah, if you really feel like, if you're able to tell right away that you don't want to keep it, yeah, by all means, decide it then and there. But if it's some random things, or if it's like all these little random items that you just then have to decide where to go and where, you know, what to deal with, just set them aside, have a junk pile, toss it in there. Or if you know, okay, this is where my stationery is going, or this is where all my sports gear is going, just put it in that pile for now, where, you know, if you know where which category it's part of. A lot of the times it's just random stuff. But if it's, you know, if it's something that you're not sure on the spot, then save it for later and focus where you're at right now. focus on your task at hand, you know, keep the category that you're working with, unless it's like, oh, this old keychain from, you know, that I got for, you know, my last trip to, you know, my last trip to Mexico, and I just found this random keychain, it's broken, just toss it, right? If you're ready for it, if you know on the spot that you don't want to keep it, just get rid of it right away. And those were all of my questions that you guys sent me. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I tried to cover as much as possible. I know that it was kind of all over the place, but because I've been receiving all kinds of questions, and I thought I might as well just address a bunch of them at the same time. So I hope you are all working through it, and you know, we've had some really wonderful conversations in our group, or I'm getting some really great messages from you guys through email too. So keep them coming. If there's anything that I didn't get to cover, some of them are quite specific, so I will address those with you. I'll get in touch with you personally, and then we'll work through this together. But other than that, I hope you guys had enjoyed this. Send me any follow-up questions, any ideas, any suggestions, and we're almost there. And I'll get to see you guys soon in our final webinar, which will be kind of our, our check-in, our send-off, and how to stay, how to keep going, on your own, like how to keep going solo on your journey, and just keep the momentum and keep excited. All right. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and get in touch with me if you have any questions. You know how to get a hold of me. All right. You guys have a good time. Bye.